Hey guys, it's Kenna here. So today we're going to go ahead and take a look at sound and acoustics as part of our waves unit. So let's go ahead and jump right in. Now, you might want to remember that sound is a compressional wave and a mechanical wave. And so as such, it requires a medium to go ahead and transport it. As a compressional wave, instead of having traditional peaks and troughs like a transverse wave, it's going to have compressions and rarefactions. And this is based primarily on air pressure, okay, due to the vibration of materials. All right, so number one, what is sound? Number two, what are pitch and frequency and how do they relate to sound? Number three, what is the Doppler effect and how is it produced? Number four, how is a sonic boom created and how does that relate to Mach speeds? And number five, how does echolocation work and what are some examples? So in the simplest way, sound is produced when matter vibrates or moves back and forth very quickly. The sound wave produced is a type of longitudinal or compressional wave. For example, when you hit a drum, parts of the drum will vibrate, creating changes in the air pressure surrounding the drum. Okay. If you use something like a stringed instrument, they make different sounds by plucking the strings. The shorter the string, the quicker it vibrates, producing a higher pitched sound. The longer the string, the slower it vibrates, producing a lower pitched sound. And so here is kind of a range of common sounds. You'll see here you've got the piano or keyboard with middle C there, and that covers a lot of different ranges. The bass, trombone tend to be on the lower end, the violin up in the higher end, a little wider range, but a flute up on the higher end. Female speech is higher than male speech. Shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. And in terms of hearing, you've got your audible wavelength, which covers that major frequency from about 16 hertz to above 16,000 hertz. And we'll try and take a look at that today if we can. Okay. Now, as we mentioned before, sounds are produced by vibrating matter. Sound is a mechanical wave, and as such, it will not travel through a vacuum. It needs to have a medium to carry it. So, one group is the reeds. Now, reeds are going to include things like a saxophone, okay, anything that's a reeded instrument. We have strings. You think about like a guitar or a violin or a cello. We've got our membranes. These are things like our drums. And then we've got air columns. We start thinking of a lot of your brass instruments, trumpet, trombone, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going to go ahead and play you a sound, a little piece or snippet of sound from each of these groups of instruments. So I'd like you to take a minute and go ahead and just listen. Listen to the different tonal quality. Okay, listen to how the sound and think about how the sound is produced because of the different types of vibrations that are going in these examples. All right, let's go ahead and start with our reed instruments. Okay, so you can hear the vibration actually even in the sound as it's going through. Okay, now remember, usually when you're playing a reed, you're going to go ahead and moisten the wood so that it goes ahead and it vibrates a little bit better against the air column that you're producing as you blow through the instrument. All right, let's go ahead and try some strings now. Now listen to the tone quality and the way the sound is produced and think about where the vibrations come from. Okay, so the strings are now being plucked, and they were being played with a bow before. But in each one of these cases, you're still hearing a vibration of that string going back and forth and back and forth. Now let's go ahead and try drums and our membranes. All right. And lastly, one of my personal favorite groups. Okay, I love the strings too, but air columns. I was a trumpet player myself for some time. And so let's go ahead and take a listen to this. Okay, now remember the vibrations here, instead of it being a string or a membrane or a reed, is actually usually produced with the lips going ahead and putting vibrations or blowing through, you know, the actual instrument. So producing the vibration through some sort of puckered something like that as you're going to go ahead and go through. But listen to the sound. Okay, so those are some examples of some different types of vibrations coming from different types of instruments. So sound has a lot of similar characteristics in many ways to light or electromagnetic radiation in different types of waves. Um, Sound possesses all the characteristics that are common to all waves that you would have seen in our wave basics notes. Okay, just like all longitudinal or compressional waves, which require a medium, the sound waves possess a velocity, frequency, wavelength, phase, period, and amplitude. Sound waves also can reflect, refract, diffract, and interfere, but these last ones in this bullet point are going to be covered more in our next unit, not this unit going over the basics of waves. When we go ahead and start looking at amplitude and frequency, and I'm using transverse wave here to make it easier for you to see, but remember sound wave is actually a longitudinal or compressional wave. We relate amplitude to volume and frequency to the pitch. So the greater the amplitude, the more the volume gets really loud. And the smaller the amplitude, the quieter the volume ends up being. Okay? When we start thinking about frequency, a really deep sound, a lower pitch is going to have a shorter, a higher frequency. And
Something that has a really high short sound is going to be a really short frequency.
so frequency is related to pitch, whether it's high or low, and amplitude is related to volume. And we can calculate it as we showed you before. Velocity is equal to wavelength times frequency. So volume is the loudness or softness of a sound. So the harder you hit a drum, the more the drum's going to vibrate, and the greater the sound is going to disrupt all the air molecules around it. So you feel a greater push of the air pressure when it strikes the tympanic membrane. Okay? Volume is directly related to the amplitude of the sound. The greater the amplitude of the wave, the more volume it has. The unit when we measure volume is in decibels. Okay, you probably recognize this term. Maybe you've heard it from your speakers. Now, here is a range of different sounds and where they typically are going to go ahead and fall with respect to their volume. A whisper is going to be really low, somewhere down at around 15, if you can even hear it. Rustling leaves is a little bit louder. You get up to a purring cat, maybe it's around 25 decibels. Your average home volume, unless you have a really loud house or a really quiet house, is probably around 50 decibels. When you run the vacuum cleaner, you're running it around 75 decibels. Noisy restaurant, maybe at 80. If you have a lawnmower that's an electric lawnmower or gas powered lawnmower, you're looking at about 110. Running a chainsaw is running about 115. And at about 120, you're reaching what's known as the pain threshold. If you ever get something louder than the pain threshold, you should probably go ahead and wear some sort of noise canceling headphones, earplugs, something along these lines. When I used to work my days in the lumber mills, I would always go ahead and wear earplugs so that I didn't damage my ears because I was around the saws day in and day out. But imagine those guys that are working down on the tarmac when the airplanes are coming in and taking off, and they have to be next to those jet engines day in, day out. So, this is why they have the big earphones on to try and protect their hearing. All right. So, if amplitude is related to pitch, and excuse me, amplitude is related to volume and frequency is related to pitch, we do need to remember that objects that vibrate slowly make a lower pitch, and objects that vibrate quickly are going to make a higher pitch. And I wanted to go ahead and take this opportunity to go ahead and show you a particular frequency or pitch generator. Okay, this is an online tone generator. It doesn't seem to work very well in all browsers, so make sure that you're using the one that works best for you. And I would encourage you to go ahead and try samples from 10 hertz to 16,000 hertz. Put your headphones on to kind of block out any of the distractions and see where your hearing drops out. Okay. Try and get an idea of what's the highest pitch that you can hear and what's the lowest pitch you can hear. Now, it's interesting to note as you go ahead and try this activity that for men, the higher pitches typically drop out first, and for women, typically the lower pitches drop out first. Um, Interesting, especially because men's voices tend to be a little lower and women's voices tend to be a little higher. Coincidence? I'll leave that up to you to think about. So go ahead and pause here and try this particular tone generator. Get some time listening to these. See if you can do an auditory test. I would love to go ahead and get a private comment from you to let me know where you were in that range so we can kind of get an idea of how your hearing is. Okay, so pause the video here and go ahead and give this a try. So you can see here, this is the online tone generator set at 440 hertz. If you've got good speakers in a quiet bedroom, this works just as well as headphones. But it's nice to be able to kind of focus on what it is you're hearing. When you push the button, you should go ahead and hear the tone, and then the toggle here will allow you to go ahead and lower and increase the frequency of the sound you're making. So there's your tone. Notice the hertz goes down, the tone gets lower, the pitch goes down because the frequency, longer wavelength. When you go up the other way, anyway, you get the idea. All right, so that's the online pitch generator or online tone generator. I'll let you go ahead and play with that when you have time. So acoustics, what is acoustics? Acoustics is the study of sound and the ways to optimize the hearing of sound inside various structures. This concert hall you see pictured below uses cloth curtains to help reduce the reverberation so you don't get as much echo off it. So the sound goes out, but then it kind of gets deadened so you don't hear the kind of bounce back that you could off of some reflections that might hit the back of the auditorium or concert hall. There is a huge field of engineering known as acoustical engineering or acoustic engineering, and this is the branch of engineering that deals with sound and vibration. It is the application of acoustics, the science of sound and vibration, in technology. Acoustic engineers are brought in even more commonly than ever because even the building, the science building at Willamette, had an acoustical engineer come in and evaluate the way that sound was going to bounce off the hallways in the science hall before the building was open to the public to kind of try and see if they needed to change any shapes. Putting up those panels that you see in the hallways helped to reduce the amount of echo and noise that was produced in the hallways to try and make a quieter learning environment. But the really great acoustic engineers are typically concerned with designing, analyzing, and controlling sound in performance spaces so that you can see all sorts of different types of performance spaces. Does anybody know this particular space? Yeah, this is Disney Concert Hall, meticulously designed for optimal acoustics. Nagata Acoustics, a consulting firm considered probably the top one in the world, was hired to ensure optimal sound not only internally, but a lot of these external spaces have these sweeps and bends to produce external areas where music could be performed by an individual or singing could be done to help bring in more people to the concert hall. So, pretty amazing design. It's striking in terms of its appearance, but that performs a double purpose. One, to go ahead and make it look interesting, but two, also to provide acoustics both internally and externally for optimal playback or listening. Okay. Uh, Probably one of the ones you're most familiar with is something maybe like this. This is what's known as vineyard style. For this design of concert hall, seating surrounds the stage, rising up in series of rows in the manner of sloping terraces of a vineyard. Maybe contrasted with, say, a shoebox, which has a much more rectangular shape and a stage at one end. You can see these when they set up a lot of your basketball arenas for concerts, whether it's the Staples Center, Madison Square Garden, and depending on where exactly they go ahead and place the stage. But ultimately, regardless of what design they go for or what shape they have to deal with, the purpose of acoustical engineering is noise control. Unwanted noise can have a significant impact on animal and human health, as well-being, reduce attainment by pupils in schools, cause hearing loss, decrease the appreciation of a great musical number, be able to view a particular performance. So there's a lot of things that kind of go into this. Now, noise control principles are implemented into technology and design in a variety of ways, including control by redesigning sound sources, the design of noise barriers, sound absorbers, silencers, and buffer zones, and the use of hearing protection, earmuffs, or earplugs. One of the things that's becoming increasingly popular is noise cancellation. Okay. Now, noise cancellation can be done a variety of different ways, but one of the coolest ways is to actually cancel noise with noise. And so they have new technologies that try and match external sounds and produce the opposite sound in terms of the waves so that the waves cancel each other out so that it ends up blocking out sound that way. Cool example of this is the Harman noise cancellation sound system. So I'm going to go ahead and play that Harman, a little example of that Harman for you. Okay.
A car is more than just a means to get from A to B. It's a reflection of lifestyle. Consumers spend more time listening to music in their car than any other place, whether it's commuting, taking a road trip, or having a fun night out. Great sound quality has become an important priority. But perfect acoustics can be a challenge in the noisy environment of our cars. The best advances in engine efficiency and sound dampening aren't enough. Larger tires, wheels with low-profile tires, rough surfaces, and other factors produce unwanted road noise, contributing to driver fatigue and preventing all occupants from fully enjoying their music while on the road. That's why Harman, a recognized global leader in audio, has partnered with Lotus Engineering to create one of the most exciting advances in automotive acoustics, the Road Noise Cancellation System, or RNC. RNC detects the unwanted road noise and generates a matching inverse sound wave to cancel it out, using similar principles to noise cancellation headphones. The result is crystal clear sound, a more comfortable ride, and with less need for traditional sound dampening materials, a lighter, more fuel-efficient vehicle.
For our automotive partners, good sound is a very important part of the vehicles they make. As you can imagine, their customers want to enjoy their favorite music in the best possible setting. That's why Harman set out to address the issue of noise coming into the cabin from external sources. Our patented True Audio technology ensures that only unwanted noise is cancelled, while audio playback fully preserved. All this works in the car automatically. You don't have to think about it at all. Just enjoy your music.
Harman uses specialized accelerometers installed on the chassis, a controller with a proprietary algorithm, and precision microphones inside the car to actively reduce road noise, leaving a calm and quiet environment. Identifying the right noises to cancel is an important element of the collaboration between Harman and Lotus.
Lotus has been working on innovative vehicles and particularly suspension systems for many years. So that really gives us excellent knowledge on vehicle dynamics, how noise is created inside cars, how the tyres interact with the road, and how this noise is then transmitted through the suspension system through to the customer. In fact, this knowledge is central to making this technology really work to its maximum efficiency. The reason this technology is now relevant today is because it provides a solution to actually lower the noise inside the vehicle cabin without adding extra weight, which is obviously bad for CO2 performance. And that allows you to have a really refined car, but also a very light and fuel-efficient car with good CO2 performance. And that's really what's driving the industry to be interested in this technology.
RNC creates a peaceful, quiet interior for a relaxing atmosphere that is also ideal for enjoying your favorite music.
Okay, so pretty cool, right? For me, at least, I really like this too. The Lotus is a pretty neat car. So if you haven't seen a Lotus or heard of a Lotus as a company, check out some of their cars, especially some of their race cars. They're pretty spectacular. And so this kind of high-end engineering is dovetailing from the acoustic side as well as from the performance side in terms of the automobiles. All right, so the next thing I wanted to talk about with sound is also kind of related to cars. And so many of you have stood on a street corner or a stop sign and had a car go by you, and sometimes it's a friend and they'll honk the horn or they'll just lay on the horn, and you get to hear what's known as the Doppler effect, that kind of as they kind of go by. So let's talk a little bit about how the Doppler effect works. Okay, so the Doppler effect essentially is that if a stationary train was putting the horn on, the sound would sound the same to everywhere, everybody all around the train. But if that train begins to move, the sound waves in front of it get compressed and the sound waves behind it get stretched out. Now, if you remember when we were talking about pitch earlier, shorter wavelengths represent higher pitches. Longer wavelengths represent lower pitches. And so the sound, as it's coming towards you, sounds higher. And as it goes past you, those wavelengths get stretched out and it sounds lower. So again, that's that as you go ahead and listen to it. Okay. All right. Now, this happened to cause a funny part of the Big Bang Theory, so I couldn't help but kind of throw this little piece in just for fun, but it'll help you hopefully remember how the Doppler effect works. Oop.
Hey, Sheldon, there's something I want to talk to you about before we go to the party.
I don't care if anybody gets it. I'm going as the Doppler effect.
No, it's not.
If I have to, I can demonstrate. So what time does the costume parade start?
The parade?
Yeah, so the judges can give out the prizes for best costume. You know, most frightening, most authentic, most accurate visualization of a scientific principle.
Oh, Sheldon, I'm sorry, but there aren't going to be any parades or judges or prizes.
This party is just going to suck.
Oh, come on, it's going to be fun, and you all look great. I mean, look at you, Thor, and oh, Peter Pan, that's so cute.
Actually, Penny, he's wrong.
I'm Peter Pan!
And I got a handful of pixie dust with your name on it.
No, you don't. Hey, what's Sheldon supposed to be?
Oh, he's the Doppler effect.
Yes. It's the apparent change in the frequency of a wave caused by relative motion between the source of the wave and the observer. It's the apparent change in the frequency of a wave caused by relative motion between the source of the wave and the observer. It's the apparent change in the frequency of a wave caused by relative motion between the source of the wave and the observer.
Oh, sure, I see it now, the Doppler effect. All right, I got a shower. You guys, make yourselves comfortable.
Okay.
See? People get it.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
So what are you supposed to be?
Me? I'll give you a hint. Meow.
A choo-choo train?
Close. Meow.
A brain-damaged choo-choo train?
Meow.
I still don't get it.
I'm the Doppler effect.
Okay, if that is some sort of learning disability, I think it's very insensitive.
Why don't you just tell people you're a zebra?
Well, why don't you just tell people you're one of the 7 dwarves?
Because I'm Frodo.
Yes, well, I'm the Doppler effect. It's the apparent change in the frequency of a wave caused by relative motion between the source of the wave and the observer.
So now at this point, you probably got it. Okay. So the next thing I wanted to talk about was supersonic flight and the sonic boom. So before we go ahead and start talking about how we can calculate the Mach number, You may have heard Mach 1, Mach 3, Mach 5, so on and so forth in terms of how fast these flying objects can go ahead and travel. Let's go ahead and watch a quick video about how sonic booms happen.
Sound travels at about 760 miles per hour, or 340 meters per second. That's about 661 knots on an average day at sea level. And sometimes you can almost see it. Going close to that speed through air can cause some unusual visual effects. What you're looking at here is a NASA image of an SR-71 bending light waves from the pressure differentials it's producing. Air's pressure and temperature both drop when airspeed increases. Rapid changes in density can be enough to bend light like a lens. How does it happen? Airspeed increases as it flows over the form of an aircraft, pushing its way near Mach 1, the speed of sound. That means that even aircraft slower than the speed of sound can accelerate the air moving over them beyond the speed of sound. As pressure all around the aircraft drops, that air cools. And as air cools, its ability to hold moisture drops. So if there's enough moisture, you'll see it form in clouds that appear attached to the aircraft itself. But the cone-shaped clouds you see aren't in fact traveling with the aircraft. Each section of air is spontaneously reacting to the temperature and pressure change induced by the aircraft's body sliding past. Then there are the shock waves. Shock waves are formed by the air that can't get out of the way fast enough, forming a pressure wave. We perceive that pressure wave as sound. Aircraft actually usually produce two booms. They just reach us so quickly in succession that we can't distinguish the two. All of these factors are quite normal and have come to be expected in images that capture supersonic, transonic, or even near supersonic flight. But on rare occasions, we do get a glimpse of something special. At Kennedy Space Center on February 11, 2010, an Atlas rocket launched into ideal conditions for showing off shockwave. And this is the result. We hope you've enjoyed this little tour of visual and auditory speed of sound phenomena. Visit avweb.com for aviation news and inside information for pilots. This has been Glenn Pugh for avweb.com. Thanks for watching.
That's pretty cool, getting to see that. So what is the Mach number? The Mach number is simply a ratio of the object's speed over the speed of sound. So if something was traveling at the speed of sound, it would have a Mach number of 1 because its object speed would match the speed of sound. So if you're at Mach 5 would be that the object, the shuttle of some sort, is traveling at 5 times the speed of sound. Okay. And I'm going to leave you today with echo, echolocation, and sonar. An echo is the sound or series of sounds caused by the reflection of sound waves from the surface back to the listener. Now remember, it has to go there, hit, and then bounce back. So if it's 2 seconds before you actually hear the echo, it took a second to get to the point where it reflected, and then another second before it actually comes back. Typical examples of the echo are produced off the bottom of a well, by a building, or the walls of an enclosed empty room, a canyon, a tunnel. But a true echo is a single reflection of the sound back to the source. So it hits and comes back. If you start hearing an echo, 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 this is not a true echo because it's actually an echo of an echo of an echo because it keeps bouncing. All right. Now, when we go ahead and start taking a look at this, the time delay represents the distance divided by the speed of sound. It's possible for us to use this information to actually calculate how far something is away. And this is how sonar and echolocation work. Echolocation is the use of sound for navigation. You may be most familiar of this with bats, but essentially what happens is bats go ahead and send out a little screech or cry, and then it hits objects, and then as it bounces back, it's going to hit their left ear and right ear at slightly different times, and they are very attuned to these differences so they can identify the presence of an object, how close it is, how big it is, and how to go ahead and fly to avoid it. So it's pretty cool. They can also do this with smaller objects. This is actually how they find their prey in the dark. And so the bat determines that the moth's location by continuing to emit cries and getting them to bounce back and bounce back quicker and quicker and quicker until it is actually captured its prey. So these continuous streams of ultrasonic cries help the bat to find its location. Now, I often get students asking me, is it possible for humans to echolocate? The simple answer is yes, but it's far more complicated than that. And so human echolocation typically is going to use the tongue and mouth to create clicking sounds, some sort of, and then somebody that doesn't have vision can go ahead and use their sense of sound and improve it over time, refine it to the point where they actually can kind of hear the difference between clicking in an open space or clicking in a space that has an object around them. It's complicated because the human is a fairly large animal, and so where our mouth is not necessarily where close to where our feet are. But it's the same concept. Sound bounces off the object, and a practiced echolocator can identify the sound, much like bats do. What has been identified as the visual brain area actually is able to go ahead and be highlighted in MRI scans for individuals that possess this echolocation ability. Now, there's one individual that I've really heard of that actually was what they would consider an expert echolocator, and his name was Ben Underwood. Now, Ben was diagnosed with retinal cancer at the age of 2 and had his eyes removed at the age of 3. He was able to actually detect the location of objects by making frequent clicking noises with his tongue. He used it to accomplish such feats as running, playing basketball, riding a bicycle, rollerblading, playing football, and skateboard. A lot of things that other kids just take for granted. Okay. Now, I want to go ahead and show you a quick little film about Ben, and then we can go ahead and talk about what he's capable of doing.
Ben Underwood is blind. Both eyes were removed when he was 3, leaving him with no vision at all. So how on earth does Ben do this? And this? And even this?
I don't think I've ever come across somebody like Ben. He was quite unique.
Ben lost his eyes to cancer, but unbelievably, he's taught himself to see with sound.
If he chooses to go out there and ride that bicycle, let him ride the bicycle. It's got to be very smart. Somewhere in there, it's a little genius going on. I don't consider myself blind. Ain't nothing wrong with me.
Ben has no guide dog and never uses a white cane. He's not even using his hands. Instead, he sees with sound. He makes a sharp click which bounces back off nearby objects. Amazingly, Ben's ears pick up the echoes and he can precisely locate where things are. Ben is the only person in the world who sees using nothing but echolocation.
Well, I've been able to tell where walls are and where things on the ground are. If I click down, then I can hear them easier. But if I'm walking, I'm just clicking over it, it's not gonna get it. And I can tell where desks are in the classroom and stuff like that. I can hear the wall over there, the couch over there. I can hear the wall behind me. I can hear the wall over there and the TV and the computer. Yep.
Ben, I need a towel for drying because I don't have all my kitchen towels in here. All right, Mom, I'm going to go get it.
Ben's echolocation is so good that at home his mum, Aquanetta, Uncle Kerry, and brother Isaiah make no allowances for his blindness at all.
When I was a little kid, I didn't really know he was blind. I just knew he was my brother.
Did he make it? He's determined to do what he's gonna do. And he refuses for somebody to label him as blind. You see this kid that has a whole different way of thinking. It's magic and it's real.
I don't think I've ever seen anyone quite as remarkable as Ben, nor have I seen anyone quite as remarkable as Ben's mom. And I think that's a lot of the secret to Ben's amazing talents.
He knows that there's nothing impossible for him, you know, and it's not.
Unfortunately, Ben passed away on January 19th, 2009 at the age of 16. He was taken by the same cancer that claimed his sight and leaves behind a legacy of inspiration that few people will actually be able to match. So he's a pretty special individual. Now, that same concept of echolocation is what we use for sonar. Now, sonar is a system that uses the reflection of underwater sound waves to detect objects and has been used to find everything from sunken ships to schools of fish. In fact, if you have a little sonar system, if you're a fisherman, you're using echolocation in some form. So it sends down a signal, it gives you an idea of what's down there in terms of the density of the surface, how well the sound bounces back, and you can start visualizing what's beneath you. Okay? And there are some really big projects going on looking at how we use sonar. In fact, the surface land on our planet is pretty well mapped and pretty well known, but the ocean is still fairly unknown, and we are now using sonar to really get a much better picture of what the ocean looks like.
For the most part, we don't know what lies beneath the surface of our oceans. Most of the waters and ocean floor remain unexplored. But with new technology, projects are underway to find out what lies in the deep. Since 2004, a team of scientists has been cruising the Caribbean surrounding Puerto Rico, as well as St. Thomas and St. John Islands in the U.S. Virgin Islands, to create a comprehensive map of the seabed. NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, is the U.S. agency in charge of mapping, protecting, and managing some of these waters. They're updating old nautical charts.
So a nautical chart has soundings on it, just, discrete locations, but our map is continuous. We can see the ups and downs, the ridges, the ledges of the sea bottom, and all of that is important information for a manager, as well as to make the linkages between the seafloor habitat and the types of organisms that are using that.
The waters off the coasts of St. Thomas and St. John have important habitat, including coral reefs. The waters have protected areas as well as areas where commercial fishing is allowed. Each year, the NOAA ship Nancy Foster zigzags through the water using sonar to scan the seabed. The ship emits more than 3,500 pings per second in a wide fan, creating an image as if painting strips of data across the seafloor. Weeks of back-and-forth sailing in a pattern much like mowing a lawn yields traditional chart information, including bathymetry or depth in incredible detail. But the sonar data reveals a lot more than depth. Based on the intensity of the echo, scientists can tell if the bottom is hard, sandy, soft, covered in coral, seagrass, or other soft plants. By combining the sonar data with direct observations, NOAA creates detailed maps of the seafloor habitat. The ROV is a key to understanding the sonar data. Operated by scientists on the ship, it sends back video and still images. Then, the sonar data can be combined with the visual data. The researchers are looking for several answers to questions.
Why are fish going to a certain location? Are there behaviors that are going on? Are there certain types of fish that are going there? So there's kind of a very focused science application. And then there's other science that we conduct, which is applied towards a management community.
To effectively manage commercial fish species and protect non-commercial sea life, officials need to know the size of fish populations, where they are, and their overall health. The ship is equipped with what is basically a scientific-grade fish finder.
The technology that I'm using is very similar to commercial fish finders, or the fish finders that your grandpa might have on his fishing boat on a lake, except these are scientific grade echo sounders. We transmit a pulse of sound or a ping. That ping is transmitted through the water column, and it reflects off of anything that's in the water column that's of differing density than the surrounding media. That could be the bottom, which is very hard. It could be air bubbles that's produced by wakes, waves, or boats, or it could be gas bladders or swim bladders in the case of fish.
Each night as the ship sails back and forth off land, Taylor's sonar spots the fish and adds important information to the maps.
The habitats are very important, clearly, but we need to better understand how fish are using those habitats so we can better understand how to manage the habitats for the fish.
After the sonar runs all night, attention turns to the ROV. Brian Costa uses sonar to pick locations for the ROV to explore.
It's just one of the tools in our toolbox to create a habitat map. We can get a picture of what's down there in the image, but we don't necessarily know what is growing on top of that reef structure or what it's made out of. So that's where the camera comes in.
As researchers pilot the ROV deep under the sea, scientists note the health of the coral, types of fish, including the invasive lionfish, and inspect man-made debris, including lost fishing gear and even newly found shipwrecks. All of this data will help scientists better understand the reefs here and offer insights into ocean changes elsewhere.
One of the most important things about the work we're doing is we're characterizing coral reefs that have never been observed before. So we're visiting new areas and getting that baseline of the health and condition and the extent of the coral reefs.
The NOAA scientists hope eventually to develop their techniques further so scientists can someday have maps of all the world's seabeds.
Okay, so here's just one example of, again, the kind of cross-content working together. In this particular case, we're using this kind of physics concept to go ahead and get data to help with biological assays and surveys. So a lot of the sciences at different points in times work with each other. And so being able to understand some of the basics of this may be helpful if you go into a field of medicine, things like biomechanics, starting to look at levers, starting to look at prosthetic limbs. The cross-curricular connections that we can go ahead and get between the different sciences is immense. And we can use a lot of the science to help out our social science partners as well. And so I want you to kind of realize that while we're learning all these things in very physics frame set, we also can apply them to a lot of other different areas and different fields. And that just makes our toolbox that much more valuable and that much more usable in many different situations. All right, that's what I've got for you guys today. Take care of yourself, stay healthy, stay safe, and I'll see you soon. So long.